Welcome to another video here on Keep Running with BK. And today I ran my monthly MAF test. And in today's video I'm going to share with you the results of that, how it went. And I'll also explain what a MAF test is, how to conduct one, and how it can be used as an effective tool to measure your progress in building your aerobic function. So stay tuned. We'll be right back right after this. We're back and I'm cleaned up and my face is working again. I don't know if you noticed in the introduction, but I had just finished my test and my face was still kind of frozen. So I was almost slurring a little bit because my face was frozen and I was struggling to enunciate. But in a few minutes here, I'll share with you the results of my test. But before we get there, let's start with what is a MAF test. So if you're following the Maffetone or MAF, Maximum Aerobic Function Training Method, you may or may not be familiar with the idea of a MAF test. If you're not familiar, I'll put a link up here in the upper right hand corner, and I did a recent video kind of covering an introduction to the training method. But a MAF test is a periodic test where you run for a fixed distance or a fixed duration at your MAF targeted heart rate to get a measure of your current aerobic function. And as you get various checkpoints, then you have some information or data available to you to actually get an idea if you're actually improving in your running. For me, I think that's really important when you have goals that you're striving for and you're training hard and you're putting in the time and the energy and the sacrifice. It's always a good idea to have some way of measuring, is all of this input worth it? Is it producing the desired output or the desired results of what you hope to get out of it? The idea behind the MAF test is that over time, with consistency, you should be able to observe a measurable improvement. Sometimes we like to think, am I running faster? But I think it's important to understand what you're measuring here and how you're really measuring your progress. It's not, is my marathon time getting faster per se, or my 5K time getting faster. In that sense, the idea is, if I'm running at my targeted MAF heart rate, over time, I should be able to go further or run a certain distance in less time, in other words, faster at the same effort. And that's how you're measuring your progress. So the next logical decision is, am I going to do a distance-based test or a time-based test? I have chosen to do a time-based test. So what I'm doing is I'm running for an hour and I'm measuring how far do I run in an hour at my targeted MAF heart rate. And hopefully over time, I'll see a trend where I'm actually running further than I have in the past at the same effort. Other people may choose to do a distance, a 5K, 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever works for you. You just want to keep it consistent, at least for a period of time, so that you have comparable measurements over the various tests. I like to think of the MAF test as an experiment that you repeat over a period of time, and hopefully as you plot those data points, you're seeing the progression you want. And for an experiment to be more conclusive, you try to control as many of the elements as you possibly can. When I started this test, when I started this training method, I started it in June and July, and it was very hot, very humid. I'm in the middle of winter, and my January test was done at below freezing temperatures. That temperature range has a different effect on your heart rate. And so there's very little I can do to control that. Maybe I could run at the coolest part of the day in the summer, during the warmest part of the day in the winter to try to, close that gap and that variable. But there are other variables that I can control, like not doing it right after a long effort or a hard effort, making sure I get the right time of sleep or amount of sleep, choosing the course that you're going to run this on and using that same course. Like I'm using the track. The track is flat. It's very predictable, very controllable environment. That's one of the factors that I can control, and that's where I put my energies, and then I don't worry so much about the things I have less control over. By reducing those things and keeping those things that I can control as consistent as possible, it makes comparing these test results a little bit more meaningful, at least in my analytical and statistical thinking brain. And so what you want to do when you do this test is you want to do a little bit of a warm-up. The idea is, it usually takes a little while for your heart rate to kind of get up to get warmed up, if you will. You want to try to get it up to where it's pretty close to where your targeted heart rate is, so that when you start the test, you start as close to that as you possibly can. And then you strive to run at an effort to maintain that throughout the test the best you can. You have to understand when you're doing this method that your heart rate's going to fluctuate, for all kinds of matters. For instance, in today's test, one of the turns I was running into the wind, and it was 12 mile an hour winds today. There's not a whole lot I could do about that. But every time I came around that corner, about a fourth of the track, I was kind of working against the wind, and my heart rate I could notice it was affecting my heart rate. Likewise, that strong wind to my back might make it a little bit easier. I actually attempted to do this test a few days ago, but there was an inch and a half or 2 inches of snow that had fallen overnight, and I was slipping so much, I wasn't getting good traction, and that really tainted the test. So I just turned that into I'll just make it my run. It'll be what it is. Reset, and today I ran the test under different conditions, and I was able to eliminate that factor from the results. All right, so looking at the results from today's test, I ran it on February 3rd. Originally, I had planned to run it on January 30th, 31st. I don't remember exactly what the date was on that, but that's when I had the snow. So it was a few days later. My last test was on December 30th, and then I have September, August, and July results here just for comparison purposes. You'll notice that I don't have October or November. The October test date time frame was when I ran my ultra marathon, and I was really more focused on getting ready for that and thinking about that than doing a test. And then I took 3 weeks to recover from the bursitis that I experienced from that, and I was just getting easing back into things in late November, and I didn't see the value in doing a test. So that explains why those are missing. But as you can see here, I ran 9:35, 9:44, 9:35, 9:35, 9:43, 9:53 pace. I think that is pretty consistent pacing. My heart rate was 137 for each of the first 3 miles, 138 average heart rate for the next 3 miles. That's a pinch higher than my targeted 136. I'm not stressing out about that too much. That given the circumstances, that was the best that I could manage. It's close enough, I think, given the wind and that sort of thing. The other thing that I didn't mention is some of the other factors, just kind of for my own benefit, was I didn't really sleep well the night before. I actually woke up with the cold shakes, which I'm prone to do sometimes during the winter. And I also did this during my lunch break from work. And there's a little bit of stress in the back of my mind about wanting to hurry and rush the test, which you can't do when it's an hour's an hour. But, I knew I had limited time to work with, and I wanted to get there, get the test done, and get back, and that sort of thing. I think that just added a little bit of stress. So all things considered, I'll take what I got here. You'll see I ran 6.2 miles, which was 1.01 miles shorter than the previous test. You'll see that my average pace was roughly 2 seconds per mile slower. I consider this pretty much a wash. I consider it pretty much to be very consistent with my previous tests, so not a whole lot of improvement. Given the rough night of sleep, given I've introduced speed work in recent weeks, my legs might have been a little bit more tired. That might be a factor. All those things considered, I'm not trying to get negative or make excuses. It's just an explanation why I may not have seen what we all desire, which is drastic improvement. Although I do expect in 3 to 4 weeks when I do the next test that I do see some improvement, benefiting from the 80-20 approach, where I'm actually doing about 20% of my running during the week at much harder effort and seeing what the benefits are of that. If you look back to like my earlier tests, July and August, you'll see that my pace, slowed significantly, or certainly more significantly over the miles, because the heart is working harder. So I have to slow down to keep at the target rate. That's called cardiac drift in running terms. And I was still early on in the method. I was still trying to develop and establish that base feel and that base understanding, that base aerobic conditioning. And with each subsequent test, I do see my pace being more consistent. I see that cardiac drift having less and less effect. And that in and of itself is progress. And I can see that I'm developing a solid base, solid foundation, and that aerobic function, which is really the goal. And certainly was the goal of my running at that time, to build my foundation before transitioning into speed work and preparing for the marathon, which requires some different types of training. But hopefully you get an idea from looking at this kind of where what a MAF test is, how it can be used as an effective measurement of how you're progressing in your training. And hopefully you're going to get an idea of what some of the results might look like. And I look forward to each month spending a little bit of time just sharing with you what the results are and what I'm learning about my running from using the MAF test as a tool. I hope you found this interesting and valuable. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, check out the other videos on my channel. You can follow me on social media for other just brief snippets on Twitter, where I'll just post things that are going on during the week with my running, or you can follow me on Strava if you want to follow along with the results of my runs and all the data and that stuff that goes along with it. You can find the links for those in the comments below. And again, thanks for checking in. I appreciate your attention and just sharing that. If you have questions about the MAF test, or any other suggestions of future topics, feel free to include those in the comments. And until next time, stay safe, stay warm, and keep running.